Good afternoon, and welcome back to Child Psychology Online. This is our introduction to week 4. We are continuing to process or progress, through the life of a child, and we are in infancy. Um, so, as we consider infancy, uh, last week we started considering what happens after we're born, and this week we're continuing that journey, especially looking at cognitively. We come up with this question, I think, or a set of questions that we've introduced before, as far as when we were talking about teratogens and the effects on developing pregnancy. And so this week we had this question where we were considering what would happen if people are exposed to different kinds of environmental effects. I think our example was nuclear power. This is one of those things I think if you are a parent, you pay attention to parenting issues that, over time you'll see that something comes out in the media as being this is the cause, or this is the cause of autism, or this is the cause of ADHD, or this is why children have asthma, or whatever. And this question of nuclear power and the effect on children really brings out this, and well, an interesting perspective, I have to say. Um, it, and the approach to this question, I mean, I've done this class for years and even looked at this video and other videos like it asking this question. This is the first time I really found that a lot of the discussion was really geared toward this idea about who is responsible and who is taking care of us. I think in generations past, people had a tendency to look at the parent as being primarily responsible. And what we see, or what I see kind of creeping into this discussion, is the idea that it's the government's responsibility to take care of us. And I think I'm not sure it's appropriate or inappropriate or whatever. That's what I like about the discussions, because it brings up what seems to be really weighing on our hearts. And if you look at a lot of the political discussion today, it's really over that question of, do we have this right, and there's the government, what is the degree to which the government is responsible for taking care of us or making our lives better or whatever. And then now we're talking about raising children. We're kind of seeing how it's being lifted off of the parents. Now we're really concerned about the state's responsibility, maybe not necessarily to raise our children, but certainly to provide an environment in which they would be more conducive, or well conducive, to children's effective development. So we have, I think it is Kalia. Kalia mentioned something really interesting, that the government really is responsible for taking better care of us. I don't mean taking care of us like all of us, but just providing that environment that would be safer. On the other hand, we have Kirsten, who mentioned that our medical technology, the advantage of the medical technology that protects us. Okay, but you see, in both of these answers, there is this responsibility business is really being put in the hands of the government or industry or whatever. People are not as much responsible for their own lives and their own children. Um, I looking at the issue of vulnerability, we see, I think, um, we see the vulnerability of what Kevin was mentioning as an example of, even if we find that something doesn't necessarily affect the child, that doesn't really mean anything, because like later on in life, the person could find those influences, those effects coming out. Deneb, in your answer, said very well how this idea of genetic vulnerability is really important. It's very important to consider that we probably all are exposed at some point to something, but we really have to look at when and are we genetically susceptible, because people probably are a lot less, uh, we probably express a lot less all these influences than we realize. So anyway, as we go on in this week, I encourage you to keep considering who do you think is responsible for child development, because that's really going to be an important part of this puzzle in explaining why is that child like that, and who's that has that responsibility, and what is the responsibility of the individual child as well. So I hope you all have a great week, and take care of yourselves, and I'll see you week 5.